Well, hello, my lovelies, and welcome to something a little bit different from Cromulent Wrestling and the This Is a Revolution podcast. My name's Dave the Mark, and I have been tasked by my Cromulent fellow, my friend George, the host of the This Is a Revolution podcast, to ponder the question, what if Michael Oku retains the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship at the 12th anniversary show at the Copperbox Arena on Saturday, the 24th of August. Now, I know a lot of people, and I'm inclined to agree, believe that now is the time for Luke Jacobs to be crowned the undisputed British Heavyweight Champion and for Michael Oku's tenure to come to an end. It is a record-breaking tenure, 14 championship defences, and we still have a month to go. Who knows what could happen with Summer Sizzler around the corner. But there has to be a scenario. There has to be a scenario where there is just as much belief in the story of Michael Oku retaining. If we believe that it is 100% nailed on that Luke Jacobs wins, it takes all the drama out of the occasion. And there's always an argument, a justification to be made for the other side, the other result. Take Will Ospreay versus Michael Oku at high stakes. Everybody felt that was nailed on, that Michael Oku would win. Will Ospreay was joining AEW. Will Ospreay was performing for Revolution Pro Wrestling for the last time, at least for the foreseeable future, I'm sure. And that Michael Oku was nailed on to win. And of course he did. We know that. But there has to be a seed of doubt. Ospreay could have won and taken the championship to AEW. Imagine the eyes on Revolution Pro Wrestling if their champion is on AEW each week, carrying that belt, performing in front of thousands of people across America, like he did in Japan, performing with the belt around his waist, defending it in All Elite Wrestling. What if that meant that he couldn't, when he announced that if he was to win the title, he would simply vacate it? What if that was a way of introducing a whole new tournament to crown a new champion, or to introduce something new, possibly, as many people have clamoured for before, a G1 style tournament in Revolution Pro Wrestling? There's always a scenario when the booking is as good as REVPRO's is, and when the storylines are as intricate as they are, there is always something where you can look at it and think, what if though? Because there will be something good up their sleeve if that happens. And today, my job is to present to you a scenario where Michael Oku retains the championship and it continues a storyline which will please people as much as if he was to lose it and Luke Jacobs become our undisputed British Heavyweight Champion, something that a lot of people would love to see. So in my scenario, I need to sell to you this idea of Oku retaining the championship as a good thing, it leading to fantastic stories, it not harming Luke Jacobs and his trajectory too much, and thinking about the supporting cast, all those people in and around Oku and his storylines and his arc, to see how they fit into it. So, without further ado, let me answer the question. What if Michael Oku retains the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship at the Copperbox Arena on the 24th of August at REVPRO's 12th anniversary show? First of all, the match will of course be excellent. We know that. Main event. Fantastic occasion, celebration of all things British professional wrestling, pro wrestling at its best. Oku and Jacobs can deliver. We know that. We've seen it. We saw it in the 229 in November when they wrestled a 30-minute match of the year contender. We've seen it further ago in 2022 when they wrestled in Manchester for the Cruiserweight Championship, in Southampton when Oku defended the Cruiserweight Championship successfully against Jacobs, and with Everything, Destination Everywhere and Young Guns in 2021. So we know the match can be an absolute killer. We know that it can have fans clamouring for it. The heat in the 229 last November. Honestly, if you were not there, I cannot put over enough. I've been to a lot of RevPro shows. I cannot put over enough how loud that crowd was. 50-50 split, Luke Jacobs and Michael Oku. I have never made more noise at a wrestling show in my life. I could not talk the next day. And that's not like a cliche that we all kind of say, like, oh, I won't be able to talk tomorrow. Legit, I couldn't talk the next day. Teaching 16-year-olds maths was fun. Now, we know the match will be great, but we need a big closing angle. We need something which is going to get that electricity that Chris Jericho's arrival at the Copper Box did last year, but it's also got to feed into the storyline. So imagine this for me, please. Set the scene. Copper Box Arena. Oku has just defeated Jacobs. Jacobs shakes Oku's hand as a sign of respect, even though the two clearly do not like one another. Oku accepts and leaves the vicinity, and as he's walking up the ramp, Ricky Knight Jr. walks down the ramp. Ooh. But that's not just it, ladies and gents. For Ricky Knight Jr. can have a moment with Luke Jacobs as he walks down the ramp. He can have a moment with Michael Oku in the ring. He can have a moment with a mirror in the ring. And that is what everybody is looking at. No one is looking at Zack Knight and Saraya, who pull a Chris Jericho without the mask in the ring, and they dismantle Michael Oku and Amira. Saraya getting absolutely magnetic heat in the Copper Box, taking liberties with Amira. I'm thinking, for like your Harry Potter nerds out there, I'm thinking Helena Bonham Carter. I'm thinking that level of malice as she throws Amira around, Amira selling it like only she can, and Michael Oku taking an absolute pasting from Zack Knight and Ricky Knight Jr. And our closing scene at the Copper Box, you would think, would end there, but someone needs to make the save, and the person to make the save is Connor Mills. Connor Mills, who has fought Ethan Allen earlier in the night, makes the save, comes out, clears the ring of the Knight family. He's going to need to bring some form of weapon with him to do that. He's going to need to clear them because he's not bringing any friends because he doesn't have any. Doesn't have any friends. Mills doesn't play well with others, except Oku. Always played well with Oku until they didn't. And now's the time for them to embrace. And our closing scene of the Copper Box, we've had the high or the low, however you perceive it, of Oku defeating Jacobs. And then what follows it is the absolute heat of Zack Knight and Saraya being the ones to come back and ruin it all. And then the absolute scenes, the Destination Everywhere chants. I can hear it now. Destination Everywhere. All around the Copper Box. Oku and Mills hugging, and Amira looking completely bewildered as to whether or not she should or she shouldn't. And then she hugs the two lads as well. And we have a wonderful moment as Destination Everywhere reform. So where do we go next? Well, the 229 follows the Copper Box, and there we're going to keep it very, very simple. We're just going to have Oku address the crowd. Doesn't need to have a match on that show, doesn't need to extend the story too much, just needs to address the crowd and lay the seeds of what is to come. And our next kind of big moment in this story will come at the British J Cup. Now, the British J Cup is obviously all about the cruiserweights. It is 4 matches to determine 4 men to go into a fatal 4-way elimination match to win the J Cup. And for the last couple of years, it has been set up in a format where the 4 matches go on the undercard before the interval, and the main event crowns the J Cup winner. Leon Slater last year, Robbie X the year before. Now, going to keep him with that format. Each of the last couple of years, we've had a couple of real banger matches on the undercard of the upper card. That's a weird phrase. In the 5th, 6th, 7th spots prior to the 8th main event. Last year we got Gabe Kidd versus Michael Oku, and it was absolutely banging. We also had Kanji versus Alex Windsor, which was absolutely banging. We had RKJ and Luke Jacobs, I believe. And that was absolutely banging. Like, these are great matches to put on the J Cup. This year, in a similar situation to Oku versus Anthony Ogogo at Epic Encounter, no, at Raw Deal, sorry, we have Michael Oku versus Zach Knight. Now, Zach has gone away. He has begun to make a name for himself in America. He's got lots of eyes on his social media and lots of eyes on him, more so now than probably ever. And he is absolutely the perfect person to put in a main event slot against Michael Oku in a post-Copper Box pre-uprising run. Stevenage fans will lap him up. He can be the dastardly heel that he is in AEW and Ring of Honor. It'll work perfectly. Oku retains. So Oku's retained. He's got Connor Mills in his corner to fend off RKJ, who is in Zach Knight's corner. Mills and RKJ can wrestle on the same show. Why not? That would be perfect. And then our next major event is Global Wars. Now, we don't want to extend the story too much here with Global Wars, but I feel like there is a perfect opportunity to just make Michael Oku's Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship even more solidified. He's got all the title defences that you want. He beat Will Ospreay, for goodness sake. But wouldn't it be an absolute cherry on the top for him to beat somebody significant from his past at Global Wars? Now, a few names come to mind. It depends a little bit on who wins the G1. If he does not win the G1, I think the best person for it is Zack Sabre Jr. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Michael Oku 2 after their Revolution Rumble clash last year. This time, Oku isn't injured. This time it's Oku at 100% versus Zack at 100%. And Oku wins. Zack Sabre Jr. does not lose in Revolution Pro Wrestling. Just doesn't happen. Last time he lost in Rev Pro was 4 years ago against Will Ospreay. Prior to that, he's held the title more than once. He's held it for a significant amount of time. He is up there with the greatest Rev Pro wrestlers of all time, and it would be amazing for Michael Oku to be able to scalp him. If ZSJ wins the G1, we have ELP. El Phantasmo back in Rev Pro for the first time in a long time at Global Wars, challenging for the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship and falling short. There's two perfect options there that fit perfectly into the Global Wars makeup, New Japan versus Rev Pro, and a big win for Michael Oku. And then, what happens after Global Wars? Well, Great British Tag League. And for the first time in a long time, possibly ever, someone can tell me, the Undisputed British Heavyweight Champion enters the Tag League with his tag team partner Connor Mills as Destination Everywhere. And this is the first time since the Copper Box that he finds himself across the ring from Luke Jacobs, because the final at Uprising of the Great British Tag League is Destination Everywhere versus Young Guns. It has to be chapter 3 of that story, and it has to be on a big stage. Now, I said Uprising. It doesn't have to be Uprising. I suspect, surely there's going to be an Uprising at the end of this year. What do we know? We know we've got the Copper Box. We know we've got the J Cup. There's 4 more months of the year, and we haven't got anything booked for York Hall. We haven't got anything booked for the big Manchester show that keeps getting talked about and alluded to. I'm sure there will be more things happening. It feels like the schedule is expanding. It feels like more towns and cities are being taken in, with Coventry being added this year and Doncaster for Global Wars. So at one of the big shows between now and the end of the year, Destination Everywhere, Young Guns, Great British Tag League Final. This is where it gets interesting. Young Guns win the Great British Tag League. Michael Oku turns on Connor Mills. Everyone, we can allude to it. We can sow the seeds for it from the copper box to this moment. We can sow the seeds of doubt where people think Mills is going to turn on Oku, and then absolutely shock everybody with Oku turning on Mills, and we get heel Michael Oku and heel Amira. And ladies and gents, that is a prospect. That is an absolute prospect. Think about the presentation of the pair. Michael Oku comes out like he is an absolute showman. Imagine him doing that in a way where he is trying to get the crowd up and trying to get them to dislike him and boo him. Amira is the sweetheart of Revolution Pro Wrestling. She is, the Irish queen of British professional wrestling, Irish professional wrestling. She could be the biggest bitch in the world, though, if she wanted to be, couldn't she? She's got it in her. She could absolutely generate heat, and together they could be the most intolerable couple in professional wrestling history. It could be absolutely fantastic. And Mills is made as this absolutely lost, beloved hero. It could work like MJF and Adam Cole. Mills could go back to being heel Mills, and just full of piss and vinegar and spiteful and miserable and just as angry as the world, all because his one friend turned his back on him when he'd done everything he could to forgive Oku. Because in Mills's eyes, it's Oku that broke up Destination Everywhere. Oku's selfishness. Oku putting the Cruiserweight Championship before the Tag Team Championship. Oku putting himself before the team. Now, where do we go with heel Michael Oku? So, at the second biggest event of the year, of the tail end of the year, I should say. Let's say the first one's Uprising. Let's say the second one's in Manchester. Something like that. Michael Oku versus Ricky Knight Jr. Now, that's been confirmed for a while before the heel turn. So here we play with the fact that RKJ, it's effectively heel versus heel going into it. Everybody thought it was going to be heel versus face because Oku was turned sort of 6 weeks, 2 or 3 shows before this massive event. But this massive event's been announced for ages. We know we're getting RKJ versus Oku. So suddenly the dynamics have changed. And in those last few shows, wherever it is, 229, Southampton, Sheffield, last few shows in between him turning and him facing RKJ, he can be conspicuous by his absence. He can come out and do commentary. He can come out and do promos. He can wrestle matches but refuse to engage with the crowd. He can do anything you like, but just not address RKJ. And we can start to undo the RKJ heel turn here. Because RKJ is one of those people where, is he heel? Is he face? Does it depend on his mood? What time, how much sleep he got last night? What side of the bed he woke up on? Whether he wants to, grab a wrestler by the dick or whether he wants to give them the biggest chop of their life. It seems to be, heel or babyface RKJ. Completely dependent. A proper tweener. Now, with everything that happened with Saraya and Zack Knight, RKJ very much the heel, but we can undo that. We can absolutely undo that if we want to, because we could easily just have Zack and Saraya at some point turn on Oku. Saraya, if Saraya is a one-time only thing for the Copper Box, I suspect she would be, then Zack does it. Or Brett Semtex does it. Brett Semtex does it with a Zack promo on the screen if we can't get him over. There's lots of ways we can do this, but we just generate a little bit of sympathy for RKJ prior to them running RKJ versus Oku. And when we get RKJ versus Oku in a big show, we get the proper heel presentation. Imagine a really long and kind of self-congratulating, almost like masturbatory entrance of Michael Oku and Amira.
Phrasing.
Where they are literally just rubbing it in everybody's faces.
Hey, phrasing!
Is just how on top of the world they are. And you've got this amazing entrance and everyone just giving them magnetic heat. Like that is something that we have never seen before. It would be very interesting. Where do we go from there? Well, the heel run can see Oku versus JJ Gal, Oku versus Robbie X, Oku versus Isaiah. There's 3 matches immediately that can be title defences at the 229, title defences at Stevenage show, title defences in Sheffield. Any way you want, put them on your call, whatever the schedule allows. But at the Revolution Rumble, that's where Luke Jacobs wins for the 2nd year in a row. And we know that we're getting Luke Jacobs versus the undisputed British Heavyweight Champion at the Revolution Pro Wrestling's 13th anniversary back at the Copper Box this time next year. What we don't know is whether or not Oku will be the champion by then, because at the Revolution Rumble, he can face, take your pick, JJ. JJ would be perfect. He'd be a perfect slot. It's the Revolution Rumble can main event that show, and JJ can take the Leighton Buzzard spot from this year. At Epic Encounter, Mills versus Oku. Finally, we get Mills getting his shot at the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship, and we get Mills versus Oku. Big event. Oku retains. Mills is heartbroken. The fans are heartbroken. At Summer Sizzler, we get Oku versus RKJ 3. We had Oku versus RKJ 4 years ago in the Portsmouth School of Wrestling to unify the Speed King Championship and the Cruiserweight Championship, Southside and REVPRO. We have not seen them touch since, not in singles action. We get that at the end of this year. We get that with heel Michael Oku for the first time coming out as a heel to wrestle RKJ. We get it again next summer. And again, RKJ can't get it. Michael Oku is RKJ's one person that he can't get past. RKJ doesn't lose in RevPro very often. Look at his win-loss record over the last 3 years. It's incredible. Michael Oku can be the one. He can be his white whale, if you like. He can do everything, but he just can't get past him. And that can be because of Amira. That can be because of Michael Oku still being the ridiculously good, resilient wrestler that he is now, but doing it in a way where he gets heat. That then leads us to the Copper Box next year. And at the Copper Box next year, Luke Jacobs defeats Michael Oku and wins the Revolution Pro Wrestling Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship. And Michael Oku can go away for a little while. By this stage, maybe it's time to say goodbye to Michael Oku, because he is going to America, to Japan, somewhere where he is going to get a big guaranteed money contract. Maybe it's not. Maybe that is not in his future, and we just take a couple of months away from Oku, because we've seen a lot of him for a long time, and by this point people do not like him, and it might do him good just to have a little rest and a little break away. I'd like to think it's because by that stage someone has taken the punt and they've given him a big contract that's going to change his life. That would be wonderful. The lad deserves it. But in terms of our kayfabe story, it would be good to have a little break from him and to decide what's next for him. What's next for Luke Jacobs? I will never get bored of watching Luke Jacobs wrestle Connor Mills. I will never get bored of watching Luke Jacobs wrestle JJ Gow, and I will never get bored of watching Luke Jacobs wrestle RKJ. There are 3 feuds straight away. What happened in the year between Luke Jacobs winning the 2 Rumbles? Well, really, between the anniversary show where we're almost there now in reality, he pretty much would go straight into tagging with Ethan Allen, building for the tag league, winning the tag league, becoming undisputed British tag team champions, reigning with those belts all the way through past sort of Revolution Rumble, right up until sort of like Epic Encounter or Summer Sizzler. So he's absolutely still a massively active part of this roster. He lost to Michael Oku, but since then he's been a champion and been winning week after week after week. Ethan Allen gets that run that the lad deserves so much. And little confession, I'm recording this prior to the show in Coventry where Ethan Allen addresses his future. So please tell me that address is him saying, I'm absolutely fit and firing and I'm ready to wrestle Connor Mills at the Copper Box, and therefore everything I've said is still plausible, but more importantly, Ethan Allen's absolutely fine, because I want him to have this ridiculously good year that I'm writing for him at this moment. Connor Mills is someone I adore. Mills, absolutely adore him. He is one of the most captivating wrestlers in that I've ever had the joy of seeing live. I get completely lost in his work and lost in the stories that he tells, and I feel there's so much that can come of it. I feel like it would be such a good way of us building up his distrust of everybody. There's so much that can be done with it. Eventually, Mills has to become undisputed British heavyweight champion. But so does Luke Jacobs, and so does RKJ. And at some point, you're going to look at people like JJ Gow and say they've got to as well. So there's a lot of time for a lot of these guys, but you never know how long you're going to get with them, because, you know, Leon got his contract with TNA. Who knows at what point he gets an even bigger contract with somebody and gets taken full time. It could happen with any of these guys at any given moment. So I like the story that I've written. I like the idea that it would entertain fans. It would entertain me, certainly. And it's enough there for me to say, what if Michael Oku wins? What if Michael Oku successfully retains against Luke Jacobs? Do we still have an interesting story for him thereafter? Yeah, I think we do. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you for taking the time while I ponder what if Michael Oku retains the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship. I shall sneak off into the night, drinking my marvellous iced Americano. Dave the Mark, sponsored by Wrestling and Coffee. I feel like I should be. And in the meantime, my lovelies, I will see you very soon.
Ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between, you've heard it from Dave. Now it's time for this guy, Cromulent George, to tell you what he thinks would happen. What if Michael Oku retains the title at the Copper Box? Well, much like Dave did on his video, we start with us at the Copper Box, and it's Michael Oku versus Luke Jacobs, the final match of the biggest independent wrestling show, featuring the 2 standard bearers of the British scene. We know the quality of this match is going to be off the charts. These guys, they're no strangers to great matches, plenty of great matches, with lots of great opponents. Also, they have this really violent, emotional and exhilarating chemistry that just shines throughout this match. We get to final throws of the match, and everything that Michael is given to Luke just isn't good enough. Luke has got his number on everything. It is that time. It's the changing of the guard. Michael Oku's had the title for just over a year. And then Luke is just a powerhouse. Everything that he's given to Luke, an answer is met. The frog splash goes. Luke rolls out of the way, counters it. The Fosbury flop. Luke takes him in midair. Lawn darts him against the post, taking out his shoulder. And even when Michael thinks it's time to play and gets that leg hooked, Luke straight up gets him down into a roll-up. And on the 2.99999, Michael Oku kicks out. Despite everything that's being thrown at him, Michael Oku shows what his greatest strength is. And that's not known when he's beat. You've got Amira at ringside. She's shown every facial reaction under the sun, the pure personification of the emotion that's going around the copper box. People are just wondering, how long does this match have left? What is going to happen? Who is going to walk away here? It is all carrying on big time. And we are just watching and thinking, what is going to happen here? Michael knows that the end is near for him. And he's out on his feet. Takes a hit and he just flops down into the corner. Luke is just stalking his prey, starts walking towards him. Amira's on the outside and she grabs the title. British Undisputed Heavyweight title. Chucks it in the ring. Gives it to Michael, who's sitting there holding it in his hands, just looking down at it. The referee, Oscar Harding, stands there and tells Michael that's not allowed to be in here. It's a foreign object. It's not allowed to be in there. But Oku, like it's the one true ring, just keeps staring at it. Oscar's trying to take it out of his hand, get rid of it. What he doesn't notice throughout all of this is Amira's disappeared out of sight. She's gone into the ring behind Luke Jacobs. Turns him around and with the swiftest kick up, a low blow to Luke. And as quickly as she got in the ring, she is out of there. And Michael is dropping the belt in front of him and just getting himself past Oscar. Oscar is concentrating on this belt, getting out of the ring, doesn't see Amira. Michael just hits the swiftest misdirection kick that you've seen on a staggering Luke Jacobs, takes him down. As Luke's down, Oku gets up onto the top rope. He hits the frog splash, hooks the leg. 1, 2, 3. Michael Oku has successfully defended the undisputed British heavyweight title from Luke Jacobs in what was a certain coronation, but it didn't happen in the way that he would have wanted it to. It's not happened in the way that's befitting and people know Michael Oku for. And people aren't happy about it. Because if Michael Oku is anything, he is the guy that has stood for good and virtue this whole time. Luke felt like he might be that guy that's going to start to take that place. The fans were sensing it and could see that he'd worked for it in that match and that he had Michael on the ropes. And it was that cheating right at the end that as Amira and Michael are standing there in the ring, the boos absolutely rain down on them from the crowd, who they're just not happy. And that smile, especially on Amira, just grows bigger and bigger. And they walk out to the back. Luke just stands there. That is the end of the show. For the purposes of this story, we're going to skip forward a little bit as well. So we've got the REVPRO Tour of Germany that's coming up. I believe it's 2 shows with GWF. We're not going to talk about that here. We're going to ignore that for now. And we're just going to go straight back into REVPRO live in London. And it's going to be on the 1st of September at the 229. This is where we really start to see the change of Michael Oku and Amira. And they're really going to solidify the fact that they're not the same people anymore. They are full-blown heels, and they're going to get straight to work in doing so. So, if you recall back to the show that happened last time in the 229, Luke Jacobs made a very bold proclamation. The next time I'm here, I'm going to be the new British heavyweight champion. And at the start of the show, before a match even starts,
now we play.
Michael Oku walks out alongside a mirror. And Michael Oku, there's a little bit of change in how he looks. He's got his suit on. He's got some glasses on. He looks the business. And he doesn't look ready for a fight. But there is definitely something on his mind. He gets into the ring and he talks about the title that he's holding and how he has defended that around the world. He's been to Mexico and Costa Rica, amongst other places where he has been British heavyweight champion. He's defended the title. He has brought prestige to that title. And in doing so, he's become the man that's defended that title successfully the most of anyone else around the world. He talks about Summer Sizzler, where he faced a former AEW world champion in MJF. And despite all of this that's going on, despite having the most successful defense numbers, despite the man that is going against MJF in that main event, despite defending that title all around the world, it all comes back down to one single point. Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay is the man that he will hear Andy Quildan waxing lyrically about. He is the man that all of the different dirt sheets will speak big about. It's not Michael Oku that gets spoken about in the same way. And that started niggling on him. Because he beat Will Ospreay at high stakes. Definitively beat Will Ospreay. The man who was coming to take that title before he left for AEW. He beat him. Michael makes a very valid point. He feels that he put REVPRO on his back as the guy. He was able to stop perhaps the biggest British professional wrestler of at least the last 20 years. Perhaps ever, in terms of what he has done for the country in all of the different areas around the world. But certainly within the last 20 years, and Michael Oku went toe-to-toe with him and beat him. And he feels that he has then taken that and said, give me the responsibility. I'm the champ. I'm going to guide this company through. And throughout that strongest period of the company, he has done so. He has been the face and the standard bearer in that men's division. And that's in the biggest point of the company's history. The most pressure in the company's history with these big events, these big names, having to make that money for the company. He has been the man that has been at the forefront of all of that. What really gets to him is, despite all of his accolades, all people talk about is Will Ospreay having the longest ever title run. And that really grates on Michael, but he makes the point that he's not entirely heartless. He understands that this was during a period when there was a worldwide event happening that means more than wrestling, and he understands that these things happen and that we can't look at this as something to really hold over Will. Everyone would have done the same. It is what it is. But there was something that did bother him in that run. It was around 7 months between Will Ospreay defending that title in REVPRO. And that's just something that Michael can't abide. And he started looking through and actually worked out, okay, we're going to take this stats padding away, this revolutionary long title run, and actually give people the flowers they deserve. Well, Will Ospreay doesn't deserve that 7 months of it, because there was other places he was at, but he wasn't at REVPRO. That wasn't the company he was putting on his back. New Japan was the company Will was trying to put on his back. Not in the way that REVPRO was on Michael's back. And Michael was trying to put that at the forefront. So Michael makes the point about how he sat down and he's worked it all out. And he's looked at the calendar, and happenstance has occurred. Michael Oku manages to successfully defend his undisputed British Heavyweight Championship up to and including the Revolution Rumble. Michael Oku, on that adjusted count that he is saying is really, really important and needs to be taken into account, he will have beaten Will Ospreay's reign, and he will be the true longest single defending title reign in Revolution Pro Wrestling history. And that's something that he will take pride in. He wants to have that championship run, but he knows that he will. He knows he will successfully defend at the Revolution Rumble, and he will have the longest championship run of anyone. And when it seems like he's finished, he beckons to Andy Quildan and says, "Andy, get yourself in the ring here, mate." So Andy's looking a little perplexed, but nothing to fear here. This is his champ. This is his guy that's run the company at the forefront for the longest time. He gets in the ring. Michael says, "I've put RevPro on his back. I am the face of Revolution Pro Wrestling. I am the heart and soul of Revolution Pro Wrestling. I run this place now. You benefited me from wrestling so much. Nearly week in, week out, every single event. That guy to get those people in their seats for you to make your money. Well, now the dynamics are changing, Andy Quildan. Unless there's a benefit to me, I'm not wrestling. You know, that Will Ospreay schedule that you gave to your boy. At the British J Cup weekend, I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to give someone a golden ticket to face me for this title. And I'm also going to show that weekend why I am the heart and soul of Revolution Pro Wrestling." And then he just stops. Andy Quildan's looking a little perplexed. Oku hands Francesca the microphone back, and they walk out. But we know that that's not the end of it for the night. We know that he's talked about this golden ticket, this chance to face him at the British J Cup weekend for someone on the roster. And in the main event, Cameron Kai stands victorious. Michael Oku comes out. He tells Cameron, "You have won the golden ticket. You're going to be facing me at the British J Cup." And of course, Cameron Kai, the man who thought he was going to go into the tournament, Leighton Buzzard is giving him his experience and guidance. Well, now he's gone from being the guy who might get a chance at winning the J Cup and potentially running for the Cruiserweight title to now potentially being the man who could be the face of Revolution Pro Wrestling. We then get the lead up to the British J Cup, and in that time, it's announced that Michael Oku on the Sunday show in Sheffield will face JJ Gale, the heart and soul of Revolution Pro Wrestling. And in that match at the British J Cup, Michael Oku defeats Cameron Kai. Cameron gives up a valiant effort, but Michael, he is the guy that is, again, the face of the company, the guy that everyone looks up to. And Michael has a hand in training these guys, especially a youngster like Cameron. And at the end of the match, Michael takes a few liberties with Cameron, which doesn't go down well with Leighton Buzzard, who is still recovering. So he can't get too physical, because if he gets in there against the man who, the last time he was in the ring, that's when he was injured. So there's that on his mind as well, as if he gets in there and he's not ready for someone as great as Michael Oku, what could happen? But also Amira is there, and she is not playing. Where Amira has always been feisty flame, she would sometimes hold back just a little bit, but now, no. She is in his face. And then out from the back comes a man that knows Michael Oku very well. Maybe not as well as some people, but he knows him well, and it's Zazea. Zazea comes into the ring, and he just looks at Michael Oku, and it's just like, no words are exchanged. He's like, come on. And Michael is just a bit like, okay, whatever. And he leaves Zazea, who's in the ring looking disappointed with him. And that's how we end that show. Following day, Oku goes to Sheffield and beats JJ Gale. And he's been having to think about things overnight. And he tells Zazea, we need to talk. Zazea comes out, ready to talk. And within seconds of him getting through the curtain, chair just comes through, levels the back of Zazea. And it's Connor Mills. And Connor Mills is absolutely mugging and destroying Zazea. He's taking chair shots for him. He's putting him in holds. He's really wrenching on his arms. He's showing that viciousness that he's all about. And Zazea is down and out. And he grabs Zazea by the hair, pulls him up, gets him into a bulldog, and literally drags him along into the ring. Mills is on the apron. He just puts his hand out like that to Michael Oku. And Oku fist bumps him back, gives him a smile. And Amira is just standing there in all kind of glee at the fact that Destination Everywhere are now back in REVPRO. But not in the way that we thought they might have been. So, it's October now. And London is becoming that place for Michael Oku to kind of let the people know what he's about. And of course, this is a man that would be wrestling all these shows normally. But he's not. He isn't wrestling. He said this already. He is picking and choosing his moments. Destination Everywhere come out. But it's not Michael that does the talking at first. It's Mills. He said that he's actually been really impressed with what he's seen from Mike. And it was always clear that Mills had found that vicious streak before. He never truly thought that Mike had that in him. And he's seen it. That's what he's always wanted to bring out in Michael Oku. He's wanted that streak. He's wanted that viciousness. And he said that actually now that Michael is embracing who he really is inside, they can become unstoppable. And that's when Oku gets on the mic and said, I've made my demands to Andy Quildan. We've had conversations off camera. I've let him know what I'm looking for. And it's key to note here that throughout all of this, while he's taken a few liberties here and there, it's other people that have been doing the beating up for Michael Oku. He's not got his hands dirty at any point. He truly believes that it's not him that's done all of this. So Oku said that he feels even more vindicated with the fact that he's made these demands to Andy. He's showing that you don't have to be that week in, week out guy wrestling all the time, because what happens when you do that? Well, you just become another wrestler. But when you take your moments, you pick your spots against the right people, you become a star. And the world is watching. And as he says that, two graphics flash up on the screen, one after the other. First of all, AEW Rampage the following week. Michael Oku versus Colt Cabana. And then before the second graphic flashes up, he tells Andy Quildan to get back in the ring. This time Andy's a little bit more unsure because he's seen this side of Oku coming out a bit, but actually being aligned with Connor Mills and seeing what Connor Mills did, that has probably shaken Andy up a little bit. But before he even gets the chance to protest, Amira is strongly convincing him that he gets into the ring. Andy gets there, stands next to Michael, wonders what this is all about. And Oku takes a little list out of his pocket and said, I've earned this, Andy. Follow through on it. Word for word. Puts it in Andy Quildan's pocket. And he turns as if Quildan's not even there and says, at Global Wars, Michael Oku versus Tomohiro Ishii in the main event. Chillingly, all he says was, I'm going to do what Luke Jacobs and JJ Gale couldn't do. I'm going to beat Ishii. So in this scenario, JJ Gale didn't get the job done at the Copper Box. Luke Jacobs has had 2 attempts at it, couldn't get the job done. But Michael Oku, in his heart of hearts, believes that he will get that done. So after this, Oku goes out to America and he has a great match on Rampage and he beats Colt Cabana. Great showing by Michael Oku. He comes back to the UK and the next venue is Southampton. And we're at the time of year now where we're starting to look forward to other accomplishments in Revolution Pro Wrestling. So Michael Oku wants to call out Zazea and he seems quite genuine. He said, look, I didn't know it was going to go down the way it did. I'm not responsible for Connor Mills' actions. The Great British Tag League was coming up and you and I, Zazea, we were a team. But not anymore. And again, Mills comes out and attacks Zazea. And this time, in your heart of hearts, you cannot, under any circumstance, believe that he didn't know this was going to happen and this wasn't premeditated. Time before, maybe there was that seed of doubt that Mills did this of his own accord and Michael Oku was firmly on his side after that. This time, it was a setup the whole way through. And you're starting to see his manipulative side of Michael Oku coming out. Before these guys can even bother getting a foothold in with an attack, RKJ comes out and he's having none of it. And he makes sure Zazea, the guy that he faced at Stevenage and beat, the guy that he was taken to the limit about and got a time limit draw at Summer Sizzler, these guys, they are on each other's level. There is a lot of mutual respect there. They are hard-hitting guys. RKJ makes a save for him. Later in the match, later in the night in Southampton, RKJ is against Robbie X in the main event. Another great match. RKJ wins this. And he grabs the microphone afterwards and said, I've asked Andy Quildan for a spot in the tag league this year after today. Zazea is going to be my partner. Oh, and by the way, we're going to be in Block A alongside Destination Everywhere. Crowd erupt. Zazea comes out. They hug. They get ready. They are going to go to this. We're at a week before Global Wars as well. And this is just another thing that Michael Oku is going to have on his mind as he goes on to face Tomohiro Ishii. Doncaster Dome. Again, another big show, a new venue, another thing for Revolution Pro Wrestling that Michael Oku's ticking off that list. And he makes a point, after beating Ishii, that RevPro's relied too much on Will Ospreay. They've relied too much on those outsiders. They've relied too much on those people in other companies that come in, win the title, and who go back to their home promotions. This is his home promotion. He is a trainer at the school. He's training the next generation. He is Mr. RevPro. He is the guy that has been the face of RevPro through its biggest period in its history. He is the gold standard for British professional wrestling. And as the night's coming to an end, Andy Quildan just makes a note that, interestingly, in his last couple of matches, Michael Oku has beaten 2 former British heavyweight champions in Colt Cabana and Tomohiro Ishii. So we're going through November now, and Oku says he's going to be concentrating on the tag league. Him and Mills are matching Zazea and RKJ. They are winning all of their matches. Uprising has also been announced for December. And Michael Oku knows that as the face of the company, he's going to have 2 matches that night. He's been preparing for 2 matches that night. First, he's going to be in the Tag League final, which he's going to go and win with Connor Mills. And he just casually references it there. Oh, and then I'm going to beat Zack Sabre Jr. And the match is announced. Michael Oku, Zack Sabre Jr., Uprising. This is the guy who is combined the guy that's held that belt the longest. And while Oku would love that distinction, that's not what he's going for right now. He just wants that one defining run. Be that guy that goes down in legend. He doesn't have to take 4 attempts to do it. He wants that one run with it. But he knows that this is a guy that is on a pedestal amongst people in the company. His own tag partner tried and failed to beat him as well. Oku knows at Uprising that he's got the chance to win the Tag League and keep his title. And that's what he's preparing for. But it seems like when you're preparing for these things and taking them lightly, that fate sometimes has a way of just coming up on you. And the week before the final block match, Ricky Knight Jr. pins Michael Oku in the tag match. Ricky Knight Jr. and Zazaya win Block A against Young Guns, who win Block B. Oku is obviously so enraged about this, and we get to Uprising, and in the finals of the British Tag League, there's no interference, but Young Guns get the win, and it is Luke Jacobs getting the win over Zazaya. The man that Michael Oku was originally going to tag with, the man that Michael Oku has history with, but the man that also beat Luke Jacobs in Southampton. Not many people can say that they've beaten Luke Jacobs. So Luke has got his win back, albeit in a tag team match, but he's got his win. And that's the trajectory going there for him. But then it comes to Uprising, and Michael does do what people think he won't do. He beat Zack Sabre Jr., the man who has won the G1 Climax tournament and who's going to Wrestle Kingdom to face off against Tetsuya Naito, the IWGP Championship. But he doesn't do it in any way other than a dirty schmoz of a finish. Amira and Mills are just on the outside like hyenas, just constantly chipping away at Zack. There is distractions, there is just little digs in at him. Zack does eventually succumb to them, but it is absolutely no shame because the amount that these guys have had an impact on him, you cannot say that Michael has won this anywhere close to cleanly. And that is where we end Uprising, with Michael Oku still as British heavyweight champion. So, we get to the end of the year, and Michael Oku is going to the Seasons Beatings event. Normally happens after Christmas. And he said 2025 is coming up. I'm going to be a lot more selective in what I do in my dates. I'm going to be in demand after carrying REVPRO on my back. Andy Quilder mentioned it, but you're probably starting to notice a pattern about who I'm facing. He pulls out his list. And you can't see what's on there, but he says, all of these people on this list are the available British heavyweight champions that have held this title. I'm coming for them all. Every single one of them will fall before me as I become the greatest, undisputed British heavyweight champion to exist in REVPRO. People like Will Ospreay, I've beaten him already. People like the Great Khan, I've beaten him. RKJ, I've beaten him too. None of these men are coming for me and my title. I'm going to get my vindication against those who I need to get that from. At high stakes, then on the screen, Go Ace. The main event for High Stakes 2025, Michael Oku will defend against Hiroshi Tanahashi. Exactly one of the people that Oku says they've relied too much upon, and people start to question that. Why are you bringing them here if they rely too much upon these people? Well, in Oku's mind, it's so that he can tear down the legend of them and the British can reign supreme in his mind, the homegrown for the homegrown title. Could it be more about Oku subliminally wanting to solidify his legacy a bit more? So that's how we end things, and we get into January, and Michael Oku's on commentary. He doesn't want to wrestle. He's got bigger things to be worried about. RKJ does have a match though, and he comes over to him and says, I want to know, when am I getting my shot? And Michael's like, you're not. There is no shot for you to have. And this really annoys RKJ because Oku's looking right past him. But Ricky is not the cruiserweight that he was when he was beat by Michael Oku. And Michael Oku says, I've had the gold to prove it, that I've beaten you. But they're not the same men. And while he has the gold from all those years ago, Ricky has the pin from the Great British Tag League. And he's proven that he can pin the champ. So he wants to know when is his shot coming. But it's not going to be that night. So, we get to the next month. January only has the one show, and we're back in London again. Oku again is not wrestling in London. This is just a normal weekly show for him. This is not the big shows. These are not the pay-per-views, what the big stars would wrestle on. This is a weekly show. He is the man with the title. He is calling the shots, Andy Gordon. Oku, though, does say that he is using his championship privilege to request the match for RKJ. Live in Southampton, RKJ versus Connor Mills. Now, what's interesting here is Michael Oku is creating these matches. As you'll have seen, he's leaving just over a month and a half between defenses here. And that thing that he would criticize Ospreay for, now coming up for him. So, we get to Southampton. RKJ beats Connor Mills and says again, when am I getting my shot to dethrone you? Again, Oku says, I've beaten you. You're not on my level. But RKJ references that point and goes, no, we were cruiserweights. We're different men now. Oku just completely palms him off. We get to high stakes, and somehow, again, Oku manages to beat Tanahashi. And this one is a bit more of a competitive match. Tanahashi, while he is the ace, he is not the spry young man that he was before. And Oku, despite a few dirty tricks in the match, doesn't need outside interference here. He gets a somewhat clean win over Hiroshi Tanahashi. And then, at the end of the match, Amira walks over to Michael with a list. Shoves it in Tanahashi's face. He shows it to him. And he just puts it in his mouth. Showing complete disrespect to the ace of New Japan Pro Wrestling. The boss of New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's fair to say that Oku is letting his championship status go a little bit to his head. And then after high stakes, we get to Sheffield, and Oku again talks about how they're relying so much on these foreign stars, and they've got a big British wrestler who they relied on as well, but he spent more time away. But remember, I'm here every single time. And he's just reinforcing this belief that he is the man that is carrying Revolution Pro Wrestling. So we get to London and he says, guys, I want it all. I want the most defenses. I don't just want the longest reign. I don't just want to beat some of the active champions that are out there. That is my list. But my list is to beat all of them. A lot of people are doubting that I can do that. I am the man. And then on the screen says, I am the wrestler. And in this AI voice, I'm going to humble you and end you. Katsuyori Shibata's face pops up on the screen with an Epic Encounter logo next to it as well. And Epic Encounters is going to appear in March in the lead up to the Revolution Rumble. And this is where for Michael Oku things go a little bit badly. So what happens here is Destination Everywhere decide they're going to get some matches in. Michael wants to get some matches. He wants to get himself back to where he needs to be, doing that bit of training beforehand, but taking it in tag matches so he doesn't have to be in there and take all of those beatings. And they go up against Youngblood and they lose. Michael Oku is the one that gets pinned by Oscar Leuber. And he just can't believe it. He's been pinned. Connor Mills was supposed to reach him. He didn't. So this doesn't do the confidence any good. And then the next week, again, they lose. This time to Subculture. Very similar circumstances here, that Danny Luna being out there to almost counteract Amira meant that the guys in Subculture just had their number this time. Michael was too worried about what was going on with Amira, that can she run her interference? So Destination Everywhere lose yet again. We get to Epic Encounter and Michael Oku is a little bit down on his luck, and he just proves why he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. And he beats Shibata. This was a man that people thought was going to absolutely destroy him. He beats him. But you can see in the way that Michael is acting that Michael Oku is getting a bit more unhinged. Something isn't sitting right in his brain. And he's just getting angry. And at the end of the night, he just gets on the microphone and shouts, "Do it, Andy Quildan." No one knows what he means, but he's telling him to do it. We're in the run-up to the Revolution Rumble now. And in the run-up, Michael Oku is going to be looking and getting paranoid at all of the potential opponents that he's going to have. And Ricky Knight Jr. wants that shot at him. Luke Jacobs hasn't forgotten about what he's done, and he's working towards getting that shot. Zazea also isn't happy with what Oku's been doing, and that's just a few of them. And that is quite telling in the lead up to the Revolution Rumble. Now, in the lead up to the Revolution Rumble, the Do It Andy Quildan has been announced. It was none other than Minoru Suzuki. And that is who Michael Oku wanted and needed to face. That is the man who's saying do it, because in his mind, that was the last one on his list. Now, just a little sidebar here, guys. Other than AJ Styles, there is another name on that list that, for very obvious reasons, I'm not including here. So I know that some of you will want to say, but such and such. So just know that wasn't an oversight. That was a creative license that I'm using here. But yeah, he goes up against Minoru Suzuki. beats Minoru Suzuki. Michael Oku, in his mind, has beaten that Will Ospreay record. He is now the longest defending British heavyweight champion ever. And in his mind, he has beaten all of those former champions. He has achieved his goals. And then we finish off with the Revolution Rumble match. You've got a final four. Connor Mills, Cesare, Luke Jacobs, and Ricky Knight Jr. And what happens here is, out of nowhere, Michael Oku turns up. Destination everywhere. And he eliminates Connor Mills. Nobody saw it coming. Absolutely nobody saw it coming. Connor Mills has been eliminated by Michael Oku, who hightails it out of there. Slight edit note here, in case you realise that the room is a little bit darker than it was before. It would have been really helpful if I told you why Michael Oku eliminated Connor Mills. And it was really as simple. Michael Oku saw in Connor Mills the violence and what he could bring to assist him. He knew that Connor Mills still had that feeling of wanting to be a tag team with him. And deep down, when Mills ran out to save him a couple of times before, in Southampton especially, Michael Oku knew he could exploit that, because he knew, as much as Connor Mills was showing that he was this big badass who wanted to use Michael Oku for the violence, that he really cared, and Oku knew that was something that he could exploit. In the lead up to a lot of his big matches, the tag team matches, Oku was really, really upset that they lost those. And he saw the blame for that being with Connor. He saw that when he was in the ring by himself, he was winning these matches. But when Connor Mills was in the ring with him, he wasn't winning these matches. Why was that? And that was when Oku realised he needed to cut that off. Destination Everywhere was going to impact and affect his singular mission. So it's simple for him. He gets in that ring, he knocks him over the top rope. He stops Mills being able to come to him for the title, and he puts Mills back in his place. I think deep down he knew that Mills, he had his number, but he wanted to believe that he was always better than Mills. And the records dictate that. And it was much easier to say that Mills was the weak link, why they were losing, than admitting Mills actually could have his number. He relied on Mills more than he'd like to admit. Ricky Knight Jr. sees both men, Luke Jacobs and Cesare, who are battling it out, leaned against the ropes, and he just sees his opportunity, lifts up their legs, and their momentum takes them over. Ricky Knight Jr. is the man who has won the Revolution Rumble. The man that Michael Oku hasn't had the chance to beat as a heavyweight. RKJ, the next day in Sheffield, interrupts Michael Oku's celebration ceremony. Michael Oku is celebrating being the longest reigning champion, beating all of the others. RKJ comes out and says, Michael Oku, I'm calling my shot. We're not waiting to the copper box this time. Summer Sizzler, June, Oku versus RKJ. This is where I take your title. So, we get to live in London, and we are told Michael Oku isn't there. He didn't want to be there this time. He's having a bit of a rest. But Connor Mills is there. Connor Mills takes on Luke Jacobs. And he beats Luke Jacobs. It is an incredibly hard-hitting match. And at the end, he says, I want Oku. I want him. I want that match. We're told he's not here. He's not coming out. But his music does start up. And it's not Michael, but it's Amira. She's by herself. And she went, RKJ has called his shot, but we're willing to come to an agreement under a very specific set of terms, Connor. You have never beaten Michael Oku in a singles match ever. To do it, you have got to beat your next opponent next week in Portsmouth. You've got to beat him by pinning him or submitting him. If you do that, you will get a title shot at Raw Deal. Connor Mills accepts. It's like, who's my opponent going to be? The opponent is none other than the Governor, Anthony Ogogo. That's the main event for the next show. And we're in Portsmouth. Connor Mills is doing really, really well. He is counter-attacking on Ogogo, who's coming in with these strikes, who knows exactly where to really do the damage on people. And as the match progresses, Connor Mills turns around and Amira, bang, smacks him in the face. Full view of Ref Harv. And it's a DQ. Connor Mills wins. And as he's celebrating, Amira makes a point to him. We said to get a title match that you had to pin or submit. You didn't. You got a DQ. I decided whether you should win your match or not. The match isn't happening at Raw Deal. And that's when Andy Quildan gets up. And he makes a point and he actually agrees with Amira and says, Amira, you're right. Ricky Knight Jr. called his shot. I can't mandate that this match, this title match, will happen between Connor Mills and Michael Oku. But Raw Deal does still need a main event. And if we're not going to have a title there, we have to give that crowd something. So we are going to give them Michael Oku versus Connor Mills, and her face just drops. He said, and not only are we going to do that, we need to give the crowd something a bit extra. I think it's only fair. Let's give them a steel cage. We have this steel cage match. Nobody can get him. There is no one who's going to come and back up Michael Oku anyway, because he's burned all his bridges. Amira just can't get in the cage. There's nothing she can do. And Connor Mills beats Michael Oku. Just straight up beats him. Michael Oku is left bloody. Connor Mills has got that vindication. He's absolutely got that vindication. So it then takes us in the lead up to Summer Sizzler. Michael Oku's lost his friend. Michael Oku versus Ricky Knight Jr. That happens. In the lead up, Michael is trying to get someone on his side. He's trying to find, can he get Brett Semtex? Can he get a Leighton Buzzard or someone like that? Can he get Cameron Kite? No, none of these people want to be out there to back him up. And he senses the danger with Ricky Knight Jr. And despite RKJ's best efforts, Oku manages to beat Ricky Knight Jr. But where before Oku said, I don't need to fight you, at the end he just says, nobody is on my level. He's completed the set now. He's done those British Heavyweight Champions. He's taken Ricky Knight Jr. from cruiserweight now to heavyweight, and he's beaten him as a heavyweight. And as he says, no one is on my level, Zazea and Luke Jacobs both come out. This is where we start to get to the business end of this. Zaya and Luke Jacobs, the following week in London, have a match of the year contender for the title. Oku is in the ring trying to smash Zaya with a chair. Amira is trying to distract Jacobs and do the same to him. They are trying to get the match thrown out. Doesn't happen. Order is somehow restored and Zaya manages to take advantage and beats Luke Jacobs. We've got our new number one contender for the anniversary show. Zaya against Michael Oku. The man who just wanted Michael to show him the respect that he feels he earned. The man that Michael showed so much disdain for and treated like an animal, allowing Connor Mills to attack him the way that he did. In the weeks leading up, Michael Oku and Amira tried to play the numbers game. And in Coventry, Luke Jacobs makes it known that isn't happening. And Luke Jacobs says he's going to accompany Zaya to the ring. Next week in London, Luke is out there with Zaya as he's just interacting with the fans. He's having a warm-up match. Amira is trying her damnedest as well to get involved. And RKJ comes out and says, not happening. RKJ also aligns with these men. And in the final week in Southampton, Connor Mills comes out and says, there's absolutely going to be nothing that will stop Zaya. The same thing isn't happening this year that happened last year. And as we get to the copper box, Amira tries everything in her power. She is outrunning these men who have a different area of the ring themselves. Oku tries to get out. He tries to cheat. These guys are up. They are whiter than white. They are telling the ref they're not getting involved. All of that stuff. They are there to make sure Oku doesn't cheat. Michael Oku gets up for a frog splash. And as he's in the air, Zaya pops himself up, catches him in his avalanche Death Valley driver, drops him down. 1, 2, 3. The end of Michael Oku's story in Revolution Pro Wrestling as the undisputed British heavyweight champion. That is what if Michael Oku wins against Luke Jacobs.